The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, transmitted across 17 star systems in the cold, mechanical voice that had become the signature of the Galactic Empire. Admiral Chen Wei stared at the holographic display floating above her desk. The alien script slowly translating into human text as the AI worked through the complex linguistic patterns. By order of the Galactic Council and the supreme authority of the Empire, the species known as humans are hereby commanded to cease all expansion activities beyond their home system. Any vessel detected outside the Sol system will be destroyed without warning. This directive is final and non-negotiable. Compliance is expected within 30 standard rotations. Chen leaned back in her chair, her weathered face showing no emotion despite the chaos erupting in the command center around her. Officers rushed between workstations, their voices rising as they tried to process what they had just heard. Earth's first contact with alien life had come exactly 18 months ago, and it had not gone as anyone expected. The humans had been exploring space for barely 2 centuries when they encountered the Empire's border patrol. What should have been a momentous occasion of peaceful first contact had instead become a series of increasingly tense negotiations. The Empire, it seemed, did not welcome new members easily. "Ma'am," Captain Rodriguez approached her desk, his tablet clutched tightly in his hands. "We're receiving similar messages from all our outer colonies. The Empire has surrounded our entire expansion zone with their ships." Chen nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Empire controlled over 3,000 star systems and maintained its power through absolute authority. They had allowed humanity to exist in their home system as a curiosity, perhaps even entertainment. But the moment humans had begun to spread beyond Earth, they had crossed an invisible line. "What are our options?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "According to our analysis," Rodriguez continued, "we have 3 choices. We can comply with their demands and accept permanent isolation in the Sol system. We can attempt to negotiate, though their message specifically states this directive is non-negotiable. Or we can fight." Chen finished. "Against an empire that spans 3,000 star systems with technology centuries ahead of our own." The command center had grown quiet. Every officer within earshot had stopped their work to listen. They all knew the odds. Humanity had barely mastered faster-than-light travel, while the Empire possessed weapons that could destroy entire planets. Chen stood and walked to the massive viewport that dominated the far wall. Outside, she could see the bustling activity of Luna Station, humanity's largest military installation. Ships moved in and out of the docking bays, carrying supplies and personnel to the outer colonies that might soon be abandoned forever. "There is a 4th option," came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to see Director Sarah Walsh from the Intelligence Division approaching. Walsh was a small woman with sharp eyes who rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. "Go on," Chen said. "We don't comply. We don't negotiate, and we don't fight them directly," Walsh explained. "We send a message of our own." Rodriguez frowned. "What kind of message?" Walsh smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The kind of message humans have been sending to bullies for thousands of years. We show them that some people don't follow orders." Chen studied the intelligence director carefully. Walsh had a reputation for unconventional solutions, but this sounded like madness. "What exactly are you proposing?" "The Empire expects us to react like every other species they've encountered. Submit, beg for mercy, or launch a hopeless military campaign. But humans have something they've never dealt with before." Walsh paused for effect. "We have individuals who operate completely outside of command structures. People who make their own rules. You're talking about sending someone alone against an entire empire?" Rodriguez asked incredulously. "Not someone," Walsh corrected. "The right someone. We have a specialist who has never missed a target, never failed a mission, and has never, not once, followed an order he disagreed with." Chen raised an eyebrow. She had heard rumors about certain classified operations, individuals who worked in the shadows beyond normal military oversight. "Who are you talking about?" "Marcus Kane," Walsh said simply. "Former military, current freelancer. He's completed operations on 12 different worlds, eliminated targets that were supposedly impossible to reach, and has a particular talent for making statements that entire governments remember. One person cannot fight an empire," Rodriguez protested. "He's not going to fight the Empire," Walsh replied. He's going to send them a message they'll understand. The Empire rules through fear and the belief that their authority is absolute. But what happens when someone simply refuses to acknowledge that authority? What happens when their orders are completely ignored? Chen considered this. The Empire's message had been clear about the consequences of defiance. But it had also revealed something important about their mindset. They expected compliance because they had never encountered anything else. "Where is Kane now?" Chen asked. "Classified location off the books, but I can have him here within 6 hours." Walsh pulled out a secure communicator. "The question is, are we authorized to proceed with this approach?" Chen looked around the command center. Every face was turned toward her, waiting for a decision that would determine humanity's future. The safe choice was obvious. Comply with the Empire's demands and accept isolation. The foolish choice was equally clear. Launch a conventional military response and watch humanity be crushed. But there was something appealing about Walsh's third option. Humans had always been unpredictable, and perhaps that unpredictability was their greatest weapon. "Make the call," Chen said finally. "But understand this. We're essentially sending one person to represent all of humanity to an alien empire. If this goes wrong, it won't go wrong," Walsh assured her. "Kane doesn't fail. And more importantly, he's about to show the Galactic Empire what happens when you try to give orders to someone who has spent his entire life listening to no one." As Walsh activated her communicator and began speaking in coded phrases, Chen returned to watching the ships moving outside the viewport. In a few hours, everything would change. The Empire was about to learn that humans didn't just think differently. They acted differently too. And Marcus Kane was about to become either humanity's greatest hero or its final mistake. Marcus Kane arrived at Luna Station exactly 5 hours and 43 minutes after Walsh's call. He stepped off the unmarked transport ship wearing civilian clothes and carrying a single black case, looking more like a traveling businessman than humanity's last hope. Chen watched him through the security feeds as he made his way through the station corridors, noting how other people seemed to unconsciously move out of his path. Kane was not an imposing man physically. Average height, lean build, dark hair beginning to show gray at the temples. But there was something in the way he moved, a controlled precision that suggested violence was always just beneath the surface. His eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, cataloging threats and escape routes with the automatic efficiency of someone who had survived in hostile territory for decades. When he entered the secure briefing room, Kane's first words were not what Chen expected. "I assume you've already decided this is a suicide mission," he said, setting his case on the table and looking directly at Admiral Chen. "Otherwise you wouldn't have called me." Walsh stepped forward. "Marcus, we need someone to send a message to the Galactic Empire. Someone who understands that sometimes the impossible is just another word for difficult." Kane opened his case, revealing a custom rifle that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The weapon was unlike anything Chen had ever seen, clearly modified far beyond military specifications. "What kind of message?" "The Empire has ordered humanity to remain confined to our home system," Chen explained. "They expect immediate compliance. We want to show them that humans don't take orders from anyone." Kane began assembling his rifle with practiced movements, each component clicking into place with mechanical precision. "Who's the target?" "We don't know yet," Walsh admitted. "We need you to get close enough to their command structure to identify the person responsible for this ultimatum. Then make a statement that will force them to reconsider their position." Kane paused in his weapon assembly. "You want me to assassinate someone?" "We want you to do whatever you think will be most effective," Chen said carefully. "You have complete operational freedom." A smile flickered across Kane's face. "Complete operational freedom. I haven't heard those words in a long time." He resumed working on his rifle. "What do we know about their defenses?" Rodriguez activated the holographic display, showing detailed scans of Empire vessels. "They have energy shields that can deflect our most powerful weapons. Their ships are equipped with sensors that can detect any known form of stealth technology, and their command vessels are always surrounded by escort fleets." Kane studied the display for several minutes, his expression unreadable. "Their shields deflect energy weapons. What about kinetic projectiles? Our analysis suggests they might be vulnerable to physical projectiles, but you'd have to get within a few kilometers to be effective. Their point defense systems would destroy any missile or torpedo long before it reached the target." "Not a missile," Kane said quietly. "A bullet," Walsh frowned. Marcus, their command ships are massive. You're talking about trying to snipe someone from kilometers away while both you and the target are moving through space. I've made harder shots, Kane replied, with complete confidence. But I'll need a ship that can get me close enough without being detected. That's impossible, Rodriguez protested. Their sensors can pick up anything larger than a spacesuit. Kane finished assembling his rifle and tested the scope, making minute adjustments with the precision of a master craftsman. Then I'll use a spacesuit. The room fell silent. Chen stared at Kane, trying to determine if he was serious. You want to float through space in a suit carrying a rifle and attempt to assassinate an alien admiral? I want to get close enough to their flagship to deliver a message, Kane corrected. Whether that message is delivered with words or bullets depends on how reasonable they are. Walsh activated another display, showing the Empire fleet's current position. They're holding station at the edge of our solar system, about 30 million kilometers from Earth. Even if you could somehow reach their ships undetected, you'd have to survive in space for days. Kane shrugged. I've done longer insertions. The real challenge will be identifying the right target once I'm there. Chen leaned forward. Marcus, I need to ask you something directly. Are you willing to die for this mission? Kane met her gaze without hesitation. Admiral, I've been willing to die for a lot less important things than the future of humanity. But I should point out that I don't plan on dying. I plan on succeeding. How? Rodriguez demanded. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They have weapons that can destroy planets. They have superior technology, Kane agreed. But technology doesn't win fights, people do. And the Empire has gotten used to people being afraid of them. He closed his weapon case and stood. I'm not afraid of them. Walsh pulled up another file. We've been monitoring their communications. The fleet commander is someone called Warlord Thax. He's apparently the one who issued the ultimatum to humanity. Kane nodded. Then Warlord Thax and I are going to have a conversation. Chen stood as well. What do you need from us? A modified spacesuit with extended life support. A small maneuvering unit, and complete communication silence once I launch. Kane paused. Also, I want it understood that I'm not operating under military command for this mission. I make my own decisions out there. Understood, Chen said. When do you want to leave? Kane checked his watch. 24 hours. That gives me time to study their ship configurations and plan my approach. He picked up his case and headed for the door, then stopped. One more thing. When this is over, the Empire is going to demand explanations. They'll want to know who authorized this mission, who gave the orders. We'll handle the political consequences, Walsh assured him. Kane shook his head. There won't be any political consequences because I'm not following anyone's orders. As far as the official record is concerned, Marcus Kane acted alone, without authorization or support from Earth's government. He opened the door. That way, when they ask who's responsible, you can honestly tell them that nobody gave me permission to do anything. After Kane left, the room remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. Do you really think one person can make a difference against an entire empire? Chen stared at the door Kane had just walked through. I think we're about to find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets someone who simply refuses to acknowledge that it's unstoppable. Walsh was already working on her tablet, arranging the equipment Kane would need. The Empire is about to learn something important about humans, she said without looking up. We don't just break rules. Sometimes we pretend the rules don't exist at all. 23 hours later, Marcus Kane floated in the maintenance bay of Luna Station, testing his modified spacesuit one final time. The engineers had worked through the night to give him everything he requested: extended life support for 96 hours, minimal electromagnetic signature, and maneuvering thrusters so small they were barely detectable. The suit's life support is pushed to its absolute limits, Chief Engineer Martinez explained, as she ran through the final checklist. If anything goes wrong with the recycling systems, you'll have maybe 10 minutes before oxygen poisoning. Kane adjusted the helmet seals. What about the rifle mounting? Magnetic clamps on your back with a quick release mechanism. The weapon is secured, but you can access it in under 2 seconds. Martinez hesitated. Sir, are you sure about the ammunition? Standard projectiles won't penetrate their hull armor. Kane patted a small pouch attached to his belt. These aren't standard projectiles. Inside the pouch were 12 specially crafted bullets, each one carved from a depleted uranium core and tipped with a diamond-hard carbon composite. Kane had spent the last 18 hours creating them himself, using techniques learned in places the military preferred not to discuss. Each bullet was a work of art designed for a single purpose, penetrating the most advanced armor in the galaxy. "Sir," Martinez continued, "their ships are huge. Even if you manage to breach the hull, finding your target will be like searching for one person in a city." Kane smiled grimly. "Then it's a good thing I'm patient." Admiral Chen entered the bay, followed by Director Walsh. Both women looked tense, but Kane appeared completely calm as he performed his final equipment checks. "Marcus," Chen said, "I need to ask one more time. Are you certain about this approach? We could still attempt diplomatic contact." Kane secured his rifle to the mounting system and tested the release mechanism. "Admiral, the Empire's message was very clear. They don't want to negotiate. They want submission." He turned to face her. "But here's what they don't understand about humans. We've been dealing with bullies for thousands of years, and we've learned something important. The only language a bully really understands is force." "But you're just one person," Walsh pointed out. "Even if you succeed in eliminating Warlord Thax, the Empire has thousands of other commanders." Kane checked his maneuvering unit's fuel levels. "I'm not planning to fight the entire Empire. I'm planning to send them a message they'll never forget." He paused. "Sometimes one person is enough to change everything. Sometimes all it takes is showing people that the impossible is just another word for nobody tried hard enough." Chen nodded slowly. "Then Godspeed, Marcus. Humanity is counting on you." Kane sealed his helmet and activated the suit systems. "Humanity has been counting on itself for a long time, Admiral. I'm just making sure that tradition continues." The launch was silent and invisible. Kane's suit was ejected from Luna Station using a magnetic catapult system, giving him initial velocity toward the Empire fleet without any detectable energy signature. From the outside, he would appear to be nothing more than a piece of space debris, if he appeared at all. Kane drifted through the void, surrounded by the cold emptiness of space. Earth was a blue dot behind him, while ahead lay 30 Empire warships arranged in a perfect formation. Each ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than humanity's biggest vessels. They hung in space like metallic mountains, their hulls gleaming with alien technology. For the first 6 hours, Kane simply observed. His suit's passive sensors recorded everything: ship positions, patrol patterns, communication frequencies. The Empire fleet was supremely confident, showing none of the defensive postures Kane would have expected from a military force in potentially hostile territory. That confidence would be their weakness. As Kane drifted closer, he began to make out details of the individual ships. The flagship was obvious, a massive vessel positioned at the center of the formation, easily twice the size of the other ships. Its hull was decorated with elaborate designs that probably indicated rank and status in Empire culture. Kane activated his maneuvering thrusters for the first time, making tiny course corrections to bring him closer to the flagship. The movement was so subtle that any sensors detecting it would classify it as natural drift caused by gravitational forces. Through his rifle's scope, Kane studied the flagship's structure. The ship had multiple command decks, but one section showed significantly more activity than the others. Energy signatures indicated sophisticated life support systems and powerful communication arrays. That would be where Warlord Thax commanded his fleet. What the Empire didn't know was that Kane had spent 3 months studying their ship designs from captured intelligence. He knew their standard layouts, their typical command structures, and most importantly, their security weaknesses. Every Empire ship had the same design flaw: observation decks positioned near the command centers. The alien commanders apparently enjoyed looking out at the stars while they made decisions that affected entire species. It was a cultural quirk that the Empire's enemies had never learned to exploit. But Kane had learned. As he drifted closer to the flagship, Kane began to detect individual life signs through his scope's enhanced sensors. The observation deck showed multiple figures moving around what appeared to be a large command center. One figure was notably larger than the others and seemed to be directing activities throughout the space. Kane smiled coldly. Warlord Thax had just made his first mistake, assuming that his enemies would follow conventional tactics. Kane was now less than 5 kilometers from the flagship, well within his effective range. His suit's stealth systems were performing perfectly. hiding him from the Empire's sensors like a ghost in the darkness. The alien crew had no idea that death was floating silently toward them. Kane checked his rifle one final time, making minute adjustments to compensate for the relative movement between his position and the target. The shot would have to be perfect. He would only get one chance. As he prepared to take the shot that would change the course of human history, Kane whispered into his communication system, knowing that no one would hear the message until it was far too late. "Warlord Thax," he said quietly. "My name is Marcus Kane. I represent the human species. You ordered us to be silent." Kane's finger moved to the trigger. "We sent our response." The rifle fired with a whisper-quiet puff of gas, launching its deadly projectile across the void. The bullet streaked through space, invisible and unstoppable, carrying with it a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. Humans do not obey orders, especially when those orders come from those who mistake cruelty for strength. The depleted uranium bullet struck the observation deck of the Empire flagship with devastating precision. It punched through the reinforced transparent aluminum like it was paper, continued through 3 layers of interior bulkheads, and finally came to rest after passing through the main command console. Warlord Thax had been standing directly behind that console. Kane watched through his scope as chaos erupted on the observation deck. Alien figures scattered in all directions while emergency lights began flashing throughout the massive ship. The hole in the observation window was small, barely visible from Kane's distance, but its effects were immediate and catastrophic. Within minutes, every ship in the Empire fleet was moving. Vessels that had maintained perfect formation for days suddenly broke ranks, their sensors sweeping space frantically for the source of the attack. Kane remained motionless, drifting like debris while dozens of alien warships searched for an enemy they couldn't understand. The Empire had never encountered anything like this. Their sensors were designed to detect ships, energy weapons, missile launches, anything that matched known military tactics. They were not equipped to find a single human floating in space with a rifle. Kane activated his suit's communication system and transmitted on the frequency the Empire used for official broadcasts. His message was brief and direct. "This is Marcus Kane, representing humanity." Warlord Thax was given a simple message: "Humans don't take orders. I trust this has been communicated clearly. I am currently still within your defensive perimeter. I suggest you consider your next actions very carefully." The response was immediate and predictable. Every Empire ship began firing weapons in all directions, filling space with energy blasts and explosive projectiles. They were shooting at shadows, desperate to hit an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Kane triggered his maneuvering unit and moved to a new position, staying well clear of the panicked weapons fire. The Empire fleet was destroying itself with friendly fire incidents as ships shot at sensor ghosts and imaginary targets. It was exactly what Kane had expected from a military force that had never faced an enemy who refused to fight by their rules. Through his rifle scope, Kane observed the flagship's command deck. The large figure that had been Warlord Thax was no longer visible, but other aliens were frantically working at various control stations. Kane selected his next target, whoever had taken command after Thax's death. The second shot came 20 minutes later, just as the Empire fleet thought they had identified Kane's position. Another figure fell on the command deck, and the alien search pattern shifted to an entirely different area of space. Kane's third shot came an hour after that. By the fourth shot, the Empire fleet had stopped firing randomly into space. The ships hung motionless, their crews paralyzed by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't stop. Kane could see alien figures moving frantically throughout the flagship, but none of them were willing to stand near the observation deck anymore. Kane activated his communicator again. "Empire fleet, this is Marcus Kane. You have now lost 4 senior officers in 4 hours. I have 8 more bullets and I can stay out here for 3 more days. I suggest we have a conversation." The response came on a tight beam transmission directed exactly at Kane's position. Somehow they had finally managed to locate him. "Human warrior." The voice was artificial, clearly translated by machine. "I am Admiral Korthax, now commanding this fleet. You have achieved an impressive demonstration of your abilities. State your terms," Kane smiled. Now they were speaking his language. "My terms are simple, Admiral. Humanity's expansion beyond our home system will continue. Any attempt to interfere with our colonies will result in more demonstrations like today's. We will not be confined, controlled, or commanded by anyone. Impossible, Korthax replied. The Empire's authority cannot be challenged by a single species. You are one individual with primitive weapons. Kane adjusted his scope and placed his crosshairs directly on the flagship's new command deck. Admiral, I want you to understand something about humans. We don't believe in impossible. We believe in difficult, challenging, and occasionally suicidal, but never impossible. Kane paused. You ordered humanity to be silent. Instead, you got me. Do you really want to see what happens when humanity gets truly angry? Through his scope, Kane could see new figures moving on the command deck. Korthax was apparently smarter than his predecessor. He was keeping his distance from the observation windows. Human Kane, Korthax transmitted. You speak of your species, but you are alone. One individual cannot challenge the authority of an empire that spans 3,000 star systems. Kane laughed. The sound transmitted clearly through his communication system. Admiral, that's where you're wrong. I'm not challenging your empire. I'm simply ignoring it. You see, humans have this annoying habit of refusing to acknowledge authority we didn't consent to. You can rule 3,000 star systems, but you can't rule us. We didn't ask to join your empire, we didn't sign any treaties, and we certainly didn't agree to follow your orders. Kane triggered his maneuvering unit again, shifting to a new position as he continued speaking. But here's what I'm willing to offer you. Leave humanity alone and we'll leave you alone. Continue trying to control us and you'll discover that every human is as unreasonable as I am. You are bluffing, Korthax replied. Your species cannot have many individuals with your capabilities. Kane's next shot answered that question definitively. Another alien figure fell on the command deck and Kane could see the remaining crew members diving for cover. Admiral, Kane transmitted calmly. That was my 5th bullet. I have 7 remaining. But more importantly, do you really want to test whether humanity has more people like me? Because I can promise you this. Every colony ship you destroy, every human you kill will bring another Marcus Kane to your doorstep. And the next one might not be as reasonable as I am. The Empire fleet remained motionless for another hour. Kane could detect intense communication traffic between the ships, but none of it was directed at him. They were clearly debating their options. Finally, Korthax transmitted again. Human Kane, the Empire requires time to consider this situation. We propose a temporary ceasefire while our superiors review your demonstration. Kane checked his ammunition count and his suit's life support status. Everything was operating within acceptable parameters. I'll give you 48 hours, Admiral. After that, I resume my demonstration. And just so we understand each other clearly, during those 48 hours, any Empire ship that enters human space will be considered a hostile target. Kane settled into a patient drift. His rifle trained on the flagship's command section. The Empire fleet maintained their position, but their confident formation had been replaced by nervous uncertainty. Kane smiled to himself as he waited. The Empire was learning something that humans had known for millennia. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to follow the rules of engagement. And Marcus Kane had never been very good at following rules. The 48-hour ceasefire lasted exactly 37 hours. Kane was drifting in a slow patrol pattern around the Empire fleet when his sensors detected new ships approaching from deeper in galactic space. These vessels were different from the original fleet, larger, more heavily armed, and broadcasting command frequencies that indicated very high-ranking officials aboard. Kane adjusted his position to observe the newcomers as they took formation alongside the existing fleet. The lead ship was massive even by Empire standards, its hull covered in ceremonial markings that suggested this was someone important enough to make decisions about humanity's fate. Through his rifle scope, Kane watched as the new flagship established communications with Admiral Korthax's vessel. Whatever conversation was taking place, it was intense and probably not going well for Korthax. Kane's communication system crackled to life with a new transmission. The voice was different, deeper, more authoritative, and carrying the kind of confidence that came from never having been challenged. Human designated Kane. I am High Warlord Vexthar, Supreme Commander of the Empire's Outer Rim territories. I have been dispatched to resolve this situation. Kane sighted his rifle on the new flagship's command deck. High Warlord Vexthar, this is Marcus Kane. I hope Admiral Korthax explained the terms of our agreement. Admiral Korthax has been relieved of command for his failure to maintain Imperial authority, Vexthar replied coldly. I do not negotiate with terrorists who attack Imperial officers, Kane chuckled. Terrorist? High Warlord, I prefer the term educational consultant. I've been teaching your people some basic facts about human nature. Your species will submit to Imperial authority, or face complete annihilation, Vexthar transmitted. I have brought sufficient firepower to sterilize your entire star system. Kane checked his rifle's targeting system and made minute adjustments for the new flagship's position. High Warlord, I want you to pay close attention to what happens next. Consider it a lesson in human problem-solving techniques. Kane fired his sixth bullet. The projectile struck the new flagship's command deck with the same devastating precision as his previous shots. Through his scope, Kane watched as High Warlord Vexthar's command staff scattered in panic. But this time, something different happened. Instead of the confusion that had followed his earlier shots, the new flagship immediately launched a coordinated response. Dozens of smaller vessels burst from its docking bays, spreading out in a search pattern that showed they had learned from Korthax's mistakes. Kane was already moving. His maneuvering unit pushed him into a complex evasive pattern, as sensor beams swept the space where he had been moments earlier. The Empire had adapted their tactics, and now they were hunting him with purpose. But Kane had been hunted before. He triggered his suit's minimal electronic countermeasures and altered his trajectory toward the nearest large ship. If they wanted to play a more sophisticated game, he was ready to show them how creative humans could be when properly motivated. As he approached the Empire vessel, Kane could see its point defense systems tracking his movement. They had finally identified him as a threat, but their weapons were designed for destroying missiles and fighters, not individual targets moving at relatively low speeds. Kane slipped between the defensive fire and attached himself to the ship's hull, using magnetic clamps built into his suit. The alien's sensors couldn't detect him when he was physically connected to their own vessel. Through the hull, Kane could feel the vibrations of frantic activity inside the ship. The crew knew he was somewhere nearby, but they couldn't find him without risking damage to their own vessel. Kane activated his cutting laser and began working on the hull plating. Within minutes, he had created a small opening and deployed a sensor probe into the ship's interior. The probe quickly mapped the internal layout and identified the vessel's command center. Kane's seventh bullet was fired from inside the Empire ship, traveling through corridors and ventilation shafts before finding its target. The ship's captain fell at his command station, and Kane could hear the crew's panic even through the hull plating. But Kane wasn't finished. He repositioned himself on the ship's exterior and began cutting another access point. If the Empire wanted to escalate, he would show them what human escalation looked like. His eighth bullet eliminated the ship's chief weapons officer. His ninth bullet destroyed the primary navigation computer. His 10th bullet punctured the main reactor's coolant system. By the time Kane detached from the crippled vessel and used his maneuvering unit to reach the next ship, the Empire fleet was in complete chaos. They had expected to face a primitive enemy using conventional tactics. Instead, they were dealing with something they had never encountered, a human who had decided that the rules simply didn't apply to him. Kane's communication system activated as he prepared to board his next target. Human Kane. High Warlord Vexthar's voice was no longer confident. You are destroying Imperial vessels. This is an act of war. Kane attached himself to the new ship's hull and began cutting another access point. High Warlord, you declared war when you ordered humanity to submit. I'm just making sure your declaration was heard clearly. You cannot fight an entire fleet alone, Vexthar protested. Kane smiled as his cutting laser opened a path into the ship's interior. I'm not fighting your fleet, High Warlord. I'm hunting it. There's a difference. Kane deployed his probe into the new ship and quickly identified the locations of key personnel. His 11th bullet found the chief engineer. His 12th and final bullet eliminated the communications officer. As Kane prepared to leave the second crippled vessel, he transmitted one final message to the Empire fleet. High Warlord Vexthar, I'm out of ammunition. But before you celebrate, I want you to understand something important. Kane triggered his maneuvering unit and began moving toward open space. Those 12 bullets weren't just attacks. They were a demonstration. I've just shown you exactly how vulnerable your ships are to someone who refuses to follow your tactical assumptions. Kane paused his transmission as he reached a safe distance from the Empire fleet. But here's the really important part, High Warlord. I'm not the only human who thinks like this. Earth has millions of people who grew up believing that authority has to be earned, not imposed, and every single one of them is watching this confrontation right now. Through his rifle scope, Kane could see frantic activity throughout the Empire fleet. Ships were repositioning, trying to establish defensive formations against an enemy they still couldn't understand. So here's my final offer, Kane continued. You can leave human space now and accept that humanity will continue to expand on our own terms. Or you can stay and discover what happens when Earth decides to send more than one person to have a conversation with you. Kane activated his suit's emergency beacon, signaling for pickup by human forces. His part of the mission was complete. But something told him that the real war was just beginning. The Empire was about to learn that when you threaten humanity, you don't get one human with a rifle. You get all of them. Kane's pickup arrived 12 hours later in the form of a stealth reconnaissance ship that materialized seemingly from nowhere. The vessel, designated Ghost 7, used experimental cloaking technology that the Empire's sensors couldn't detect. Kane was aboard and heading back to Luna Station within minutes. But the Empire wasn't finished. High Warlord Vexthar had spent those 12 hours calling for reinforcements, and his requests had been answered. When Kane looked back through the ship's sensors, he saw that the Empire fleet had tripled in size. Over 90 warships now hung in space at the edge of the solar system, their weapons trained on Earth. Looks like you made an impression, commented Commander Lisa Park, Ghost 7's pilot, as they reviewed the sensor data. Kane studied the tactical display with professional interest. They're scared. That's good. Scared? They just brought enough firepower to glass every planet in the system. Kane shook his head. If they wanted to destroy Earth, they would have done it already. All those ships aren't here to attack us. They're here because someone in the Empire hierarchy is finally taking humanity seriously. As Ghost 7 approached Luna Station, Kane's communication system received a priority transmission from Admiral Chen. Marcus, the situation has changed dramatically. The Empire has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding your immediate surrender, along with a formal apology from Earth's government and our complete withdrawal from all colonies outside the Sol system. Kane checked his equipment and began preparing for another mission. What was our response? Director Walsh told them that Marcus Kane doesn't take orders from anyone, including us. She suggested they try asking nicely. Kane laughed despite the gravity of the situation. I assume that didn't go over well. High Warlord Vexthar has given us 6 hours to comply with their demands. After that, they plan to begin destroying human colonies one by one until we surrender you. Kane's expression hardened. Admiral, I need you to do something for me. Send a message to every human colony, every ship, every station. Tell them what's happening here. Tell them the Empire thinks they can force humanity to submit by threatening our people. Marcus, what are you planning? I'm planning to show the Empire what happens when you threaten a human's family. When Ghost 7 docked at Luna Station, Kane was met by Admiral Chen and Director Walsh. Both women looked exhausted from hours of crisis management, but Kane appeared completely calm. The Empire fleet has grown to 93 ships, Chen reported. Our entire military couldn't stand against that kind of firepower. Kane shouldered his equipment bag. Admiral, our military was never designed to fight the Empire's kind of war. But fortunately, we don't have to. Walsh frowned. What do you mean? Kane led them to the main tactical center, where displays showed the positions of human colonies throughout nearby star systems. The Empire makes the same mistake that every authoritarian government makes. They assume that strength comes from central control, from having the biggest weapons and the most ships. Kane pointed to the colony displays. But humans have never worked that way. Our strength comes from individual initiative, from millions of people making their own decisions about what's worth fighting for. As if to emphasize his point, Kane's communication system began receiving transmission after transmission from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The messages were brief, but their meaning was unmistakable. Luna Station, this is Proxima Colony. We've received your warning about the Empire ultimatum. We're not surrendering. New Shanghai Station reporting. Empire can go to hell. We're staying put. Mining Platform 7 here. Any Empire ship that comes near our operation will be considered hostile. The messages continued for over an hour. Every human settlement, from the largest colonies to single-person research stations, was sending the same response. They refused to be intimidated, but the most significant message came from an unexpected source. Luna Station. This is Captain Rodriguez aboard the merchant vessel Aurora's Dream. I've got something the Empire might want to see. Rodriguez's ship appeared on the long-range sensors, approaching from the direction of the outer colonies. But it wasn't alone. Behind Aurora's Dream came a stream of vessels unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. They weren't military ships. They were miners, traders, explorers, colonists, and refugees. They were cargo haulers and passenger transports, research vessels, and private yachts. They were every type of civilian spacecraft that humanity had ever built, and they were all heading directly toward the Empire fleet. Kane smiled as he watched the sensor display. Admiral, meet the human response to Imperial authority. The civilian fleet grew by the hour as more ships joined from colonies throughout human space. They came armed with mining lasers, industrial cutting tools, makeshift weapons, and pure determination. Most importantly, they came by choice. High Warlord Vexthar transmitted to Luna Station as the civilian fleet approached his position. Human command, order your vessels to withdraw immediately. These are civilian ships with no military capability. We will destroy them if they approach our fleet. Admiral Chen looked to Kane for guidance. Kane activated the communication system himself. High Warlord Vexthar, this is Marcus Kane. Those aren't military vessels, and they're not under military command. They're human beings who decided that nobody tells them where they can or cannot go. Kane paused, watching as more civilian ships continued to arrive. You wanted to see what humanity looks like when we get angry. Well, take a good look. The civilian fleet now numbered over 200 ships. They formed no military formation, followed no tactical doctrine, and showed no signs of organization. But they kept coming, and they showed no intention of backing down. Vexthar's next transmission revealed the first crack in Empire confidence. Human Kane. These vessels cannot pose a threat to Imperial warships. What do you hope to accomplish? Kane's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every human in the fleet would hear it. High Warlord, you asked the wrong question. You shouldn't ask what we hope to accomplish. You should ask what we're willing to sacrifice to remain free. As if responding to Kane's words, the civilian fleet began moving into attack formation. Mining ships positioned themselves to ram Empire vessels. Cargo haulers loaded with explosives prepared for suicide runs. Research vessels armed with experimental weapons took targeting positions. The Empire fleet found itself surrounded by humans who had made a simple calculation. Death was preferable to submission. Kane transmitted one final message to High Warlord Vexthar. High Warlord, you came here to force humanity into silence. Instead, you've given every human being in the galaxy a reason to speak up. You can destroy our ships, you can kill our people, but you cannot make us submit. Because we would rather die free than live as slaves. Kane looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of human ships facing the Empire fleet. So here's your choice, High Warlord. You can start a war with people who have nothing left to lose, or you can accept that humanity will never be part of your empire. Either way, we will not be silent. The space around Earth had become a powder keg, with hundreds of human civilians facing the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and Marcus Kane, the man who listened to no one, had lit the fuse. The standoff lasted for 18 hours. During that time, the civilian fleet continued to grow as more human ships arrived from across the galaxy. Families and passenger transports positioned themselves between Empire warships and Earth. Asteroid miners armed their industrial equipment and prepared for battle. Even tourist vessels and personal spacecraft joined the formation, their crews determined to stand with their species. Kane remained on Luna Station, monitoring communications and watching the tactical displays. The Empire fleet had not moved from their position, but their formation had become increasingly defensive. High Warlord Vexthar was clearly receiving orders from higher authority, and those orders were taking time to formulate. The breakthrough came when Kane detected a new transmission signature approaching from deep space. This ship was unlike anything the Empire had sent before, smaller than the warships but radiating authority signatures that made even High Warlord Vexthar's vessel look insignificant. Admiral, Kane called Chen over to the communication station. We're about to meet someone very important. The new vessel took position at the center of the Empire fleet and immediately began transmitting on priority command frequencies. Within minutes, every Empire ship had repositioned into a ceremonial formation that suggested they were receiving orders from the highest levels of their government. Kane's communication system activated with a new voice, older, more refined, and carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute power. Human designated Kane, I am Chancellor Theron, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Empire. I have traveled here personally to resolve this unprecedented situation. Kane checked his rifle, though he knew it would be useless at this range. Chancellor Theron, this is Marcus Kane. I hope your people have briefed you on our conversation. They have provided extensive reports, Theron replied. I must admit, your species has demonstrated capabilities that were not anticipated in our initial assessment. Kane looked out at the hundreds of human civilian ships surrounding the Empire fleet. Chancellor, what you're seeing isn't a demonstration of our capabilities. It's a demonstration of our character. Explain. Kane activated a ship-wide broadcast so that every human in the fleet could hear his words. For 3,000 years, your empire has expanded by giving species a simple choice: submit or die. You've been successful because every other species eventually chose survival over freedom. Kane paused, watching the sensor displays as more human ships continued to arrive. But humans are different, Chancellor. We've been fighting for freedom since we climbed down from the trees. We've fought each other. We've fought nature. We've fought impossible odds. And the one thing we've learned is that some things are worth dying for. Chancellor Theron's response took several minutes to arrive. Human Kane. The Empire cannot allow a precedent where individual species refuse imperial authority. If we permit humanity to remain independent, other species may follow your example. Kane smiled. Chancellor, that's exactly what we're counting on. The communication channel remained silent for a long time. Kane could imagine the conversations taking place within the Empire fleet as their leadership grappled with a problem they had never faced before. Finally, Chancellor Theron transmitted again. Human Kane, the Empire proposes a compromise. Humanity will be granted autonomous status within Imperial space. You may maintain your current colonies and continue limited expansion, but you will acknowledge Imperial authority and provide tribute to the Empire. Kane's response was immediate. Respectfully declined, Chancellor. Humans don't pay tribute to anyone. Then you choose war with the Empire? Kane looked at the tactical display one more time. The human civilian fleet now numbered over 400 ships, and they were still arriving. Every vessel represented families, communities, and individuals who had made the same choice Kane had made. Freedom was worth any price. Chancellor, we're not choosing war. We're choosing independence. Whether that leads to war depends entirely on your decision. Kane activated his personal transmitter and sent a coded message to every human ship in the fleet. The response was instantaneous. Every civilian vessel began broadcasting the same signal. The opening notes of an ancient Earth song called the Star-Spangled Banner. The Empire fleet found themselves surrounded by hundreds of ships singing about freedom, independence, and the courage to fight impossible odds. It was perhaps the most human response possible to an ultimatum. Chancellor Theron's final transmission came 6 hours later. Human Kane, the Empire Council has reached a decision. Humanity will be granted a unique status. You will be classified as an unincorporated species with full autonomy over your territory. The Empire will not interfere with human expansion or governance. Kane felt the tension in his shoulders finally release. In exchange for what, Chancellor? In exchange for the understanding that this arrangement is unique to humanity. Other species will not be offered the same terms. Kane considered this, and if other species demand the same independence we've claimed, that will be their choice to make, Theron replied. And their burden to carry, Kane smiled. The Chancellor had just acknowledged something crucial. The Empire's authority depended on species choosing to submit. Once that choice was challenged successfully, the entire system became vulnerable. Chancellor Theron, on behalf of humanity, I accept these terms. With one addition. State your addition. Marcus Kane and people like him will continue to exist. If the Empire ever decides to change its position regarding human independence, you'll be dealing with all of us, not just your formal military opponents. The pause was longer this time. Understood, Human Kane. The Empire will remember this lesson. As the Empire fleet began its withdrawal from human space, Kane watched from Luna Station's observation deck. The civilian fleet was dispersing as well, hundreds of ships returning to their homes throughout the galaxy. They had come when humanity needed them, and now they were going back to their lives knowing they had changed the course of history. Admiral Chen joined Kane at the observation window. "So what happens now?" Kane shouldered his rifle case. "Now humanity gets back to what we do best, Admiral. We explore, we expand, we ask questions that don't have easy answers, and we refuse to accept that anything is impossible." Chen looked out at the departing civilian fleet. "And if the Empire changes its mind?" Kane smiled. "Then they'll discover that Earth has a lot more people like me than they want to deal with. People who grew up believing that freedom isn't something you ask permission for. It's something you take and defend." As the last Empire ship disappeared into hyperspace, Kane received a final transmission from Chancellor Theron. "Human Kane, the Empire will be watching your species with great interest. Your approach to authority is unique in our experience," Kane replied without hesitation. "Chancellor, you're going to find that everything about humanity is unique in your experience. We don't just think differently, we refuse to be limited by other people's definitions of possible." The transmission ended, and Kane began walking toward the docking bay. His mission was complete, but something told him it was only the beginning. Throughout the galaxy, other species had witnessed humanity's confrontation with the Empire. They had seen what happened when someone simply refused to submit. Kane suspected that the Empire was about to discover that rebellions, like freedom, had a tendency to spread. And that was exactly as it should be. Behind him, Earth continued its slow rotation, carrying 8 billion humans who had just learned that their independence had been won by one man, with a rifle who listened to no one. They would remember that lesson and they would teach it to their children. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.